Back here with John Ramdine and Robin Black, I'm John Pollock, and we're chatting about the UFC card from Saturday night in Houston, Texas, which certainly had some standout performances. Jessica Andrade and Angela Hill had, I thought, a fight of the year contender. They just had an excellent 3-round fight. I think that solidifies Jessica Andrade as the new challenger for Joanna Jędrzejczyk. Felice Herrig defeating Alexa Grasso. Curtis Blades, who just threw Adam Milstead around with 7 slams in the opening round, and unfortunately Milstead suffering an awful knee injury that ended the fight in the second round. And then you had Khalil Roundtree with a knee to the face in the opening fight against Daniel Jolly. There were some really interesting fights on this card. James Vick.
Trujillo.
Wouldn't give up on that Darce choke and got him in the third. And I mean, I name off Khalil Roundtree, James Vick. These are guys that didn't even get bonuses to show you kind of where there were a lot of just varied performances from this card.
It was a super cool card. I had a ton of fun. I was watching it with Evan Boris, kickboxing coach. He worked with some of these guys. So my guy, I love watching Chaz Skelly fight. I don't know what it is. When you take, he's just a little bit kind of awkward in a cool way, and he really wants to go engage. And he's a really fun fighter to watch. I was thrilled to see him do well. Volkan Oezdemir, anyone ever heard of that guy? That guy beat OSP. And I thought he had won 2 of those rounds. He managed that really, really well against a guy who fought for the 205-pound title. But yeah, for me, when you see a heavyweight throwing another heavyweight through the air, Curtis Blades, I'm going to be a fan of that guy for life now.
This was nuts. You had Oezdemir and Marcel Fortuna, 2 guys that took fights on short notice. Oezdemir had to cut down to make 205, and then Fortuna lied about his weight so he could take a heavyweight fight instead of these two just flipping roles. But both of these guys won their fights.
Fortuna is actually a middleweight. He fights at light heavyweight, but he walks around at 210 pounds, much lower than, say, Luke Rockhold. And when you land that one knuckle right in the temple on a downward angle, and you see a 260-pound man fall, that's a rare. You talk about Brian Stan saying that, these things aren't supposed to happen with the Korean Zombie. 210-pound men aren't supposed to knock out 260-pound men with one punch. It was a night of really, really cool combat.
I think in terms of just championship implication, the one to me was Jessica Andrade. I thought this was just an incredible fight with Angela Hill. And
the problem is, I understand, everybody thinks it was an exciting fight, but now everybody feels that Andrade should get a shot at a UFC championship after beating a girl who was not in the UFC before this last fight. Now, I know Angela Hill was in the UFC before, but she doesn't have a whole lot of experience. You get 4 wins in Invicta, you come to the UFC, you can't cut it in the UFC. Not saying that you can't cut it in the UFC. You make your return to the UFC, you lose. Why should Andrade get a crack at the championship?
I would argue because the strawweight division is largely what was the Invicta strawweight division.
Rematch.
Yeah, I mean, for me, when you look at the Andrade fight, why does this tantalize the people who put fights together? Why would Sean Shelby or Dana, any of these? Because of the way she fights. Chin down, hooks, overhands, uppercuts. You put those 2 together, you know what you're going to get. It's a hard fight for Andrade, in my opinion, because you keep coming from the outside with everything, and you got Joanna Jędrzejczyk going on the inside, straight lines, good footwork, nice positioning. It's a tough fight for Andrade. She has to make a lot of advancements in her game in a short period of time, I think, to beat Joanna.
Yeah, I just feel that she's now beaten Jessica Penne, who did challenge for the title in the past. You've got as well Joanne Calderwood and now Angela Hill. I mean, to me, the Karolina Kowalkiewicz fight. After that fight, were you left with any question as to who won that fight?
No, I understand.
Why would you go back to that
Oezdemir, for example, he beats OSP, who just went 5 rounds with John Jones. Does he get a crack at the light heavyweight championship? Is this the guy next in line between Anthony Johnson and the champion Daniel Cormier? Do you know what I mean? Is it as simple as that?
Different situation. This is 3 wins in a row. Yeah. This is an Oezdemir who came in and won 1 fight at light heavyweight.
Sure, I understand that, against the former UFC light heavyweight challenger, and he was also supposed to fight for the Titan Championship. So there's lots of good fighters all over the world. It seems that we're giving certain fighters better value for their wins over other fighters.
Yeah, and one thing that always kind of enters the conversation is how many people are interested in a fight. And you got somebody that you call the karate hottie that 4 million people watch.
Exactly.
Fox. They want to often do that. And so who knows? Joanna's in her division, in women's fighting, I think this is among the best or the very best fighter in the world. So she's got to fight people. It's like Demetrius Johnson, the same scenario. Who do you really put up against Demetrius Johnson? Somebody wins 3 fights, they're the guy because he's beaten everybody. And in Joanna's case, she hasn't beaten everybody, but there aren't that many that are differentiating themselves, and she's got to fight someone.
Last thing on this card, I mean, they were using this show the night before the Super Bowl, and it was kind of designed to really promote next Saturday's pay-per-view, which we've got coming up, UFC 208. They had tons of ads for Holly Holm and Jermaine Durandamy. Did you guys feel that they did give a big push for this pay-per-view this Saturday? What kind of sense do you have for the interest level for Saturday's card?
It feels that this is an afterthought. This, from a lot of people that I've talked to, that's like, this is not that interesting. It's like, wait a second, is there a 145-pound division? Wait a second, I thought it was Cyborg. They were creating 145 pounds for Cyborg. Why isn't Cyborg a part of this conversation? So I think it's very, very confusing. And is Holly Holm, if she wins the championship, is she going to defend her title there? Is she going to go back down to 135 pounds? I think because of that, and Anderson Silva, I saw this post to Anderson Silva and Nick Diaz about why are these guys still getting love? They haven't won fights in years and years and years. These guys are mixed martial arts royalty, and the UFC's trying to do their best to cash in on their previous success and the fact that they're still a name in the game of mixed martial arts.
I'm so deep in the Holly Holm Durandamy breakdown that I don't
Right.
know what's going on out there in the world and how people are seeing it. The fight itself is a fascinating one. It really, really is. Durandamy as a right-hander against Holly Holm, who's really the best southpaw in women's fighting, for sure. And the way they line up, Durandamy gets hyper-aggressive at times, but doesn't overextend because she's so smart. And Holly wants you to overextend, so it's going to be a really interesting dynamic, the way that that fight lines up. How many people are excited about it? I really don't know. I've been so deep in it. But if you can keep showing her kick Ronda in the head, people remember that.
Yeah, right.
You know what I mean? My mom knows that this woman knocked Ronda Rousey out. I don't like that she kicked Ronda in the head.
Well, Robin's mom will get lots of UFC 208 discussion this week, so keep it tuned. For Robin Black, John Ramdine, I'm John Pollock.